And McMahon said, "Oh, that's not true. Patterson would never do anything like that." But yet every week on TV, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan would make, references to Pat being gay. Thought that, and he said, like, "Oh, Pat likes to get behind the young boys and work with them, and likes to show them how to get behind and show them the moves from behind."
Wow!
And fans thought that was wrestling, but it wasn't. They were just making fun of him being gay. But as soon as this came out, they stopped immediately. Stopped saying that shit.
Would this have been something that people like, I don't know, like a Hulk Hogan, would he have known something like this but turned a blind eye to it, or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. He had it. It was business as usual for Patterson.
So after the Donahue show, how did other wrestlers treat you? Did you see any backlash?
McMahon, sir, you are the boss. You are what we would call in my neighborhood when we were growing up, we're being sex harassment activity was taking place.
Oh, just from one guy. He accused me of breaking kayfabe, and I told him, I said, kayfabe was broken years ago, and Vince McMahon broke it.
Yeah.
I said, so don't be blaming me for it. But otherwise, no. Never had any problem. In fact, I was on the show with Superstar Graham, Bruno Sammartino, and I flew out there with Graham, and once we got back to L.A., we went out to dinner a few times. We were going to do more shows, but I guess he became born again and decided he liked Vince. Then he decided he didn't like him. Then he decided he did. And now I don't know what the deal is.
Did they call you to have you on the show, or did you approach them?
They called me. In fact, his show called me. And I didn't believe it was them, and I said, bullshit, and I hung up on him. And then Phil Donahue himself called me, and I recognized his voice. I said, well, it really is him. And he told me what, that Meltzer had given him a copy of my letter that I'd written to him, that he published. And then Donahue read that and decided he wanted me on the show. And then McMahon didn't know my real name. He thought I was Dr. Jerry Graham's son because I was wrestling as Mad Dog Graham at the time. And he didn't know my real name, and he didn't know what I was going to say, and he couldn't find out anything about me. And they tried to get me taken off the show, but they wouldn't do it. Donahue said no. And right before the show, we were sitting in the green room, all of us, and Donahue walks in with Vince with him. And Bruno's sitting there, and Superstar's sitting there, and you can just feel the tension in the air. It's just incredible. And Vince said, well, hello, gentlemen, and nobody said a word to him. They just all sneered at him. And he eventually left the room. Then everybody started arguing, well, I'm not sitting next to him. No, I'm not sitting next to him. Superstar says, if I sit next to him, I'm going to punch him in the face. I said, that would be good. I said, but I'll sit next to him. I said, I don't care. So when we finally got to first we started at a round table where I gave Vince my story. And, of course, he denied, Pat, I didn't know anything about that, which was bullshit. And, but then we were sitting later in the show in a big line of chairs, and I was sitting next to Vince. We kept trying to elbow each other out of the chair. I started it. I started elbowing him and shoving him aside, and he shoved back. But you can't really see it on TV, but we're there elbowing each other, trying to knock each other off the chair.
Now, this was the time around the time of the Vince steroid trial, wasn't it? And then you did Geraldo shortly after that?
Yeah, it was like 9 months after that. Although I never did see that. Geraldo let me open up, and I cut loose on a wrestling-style promo against Vince, but then Geraldo stopped me and said, this is just his opinion, it's not the network's opinion, it's not the network's opinion. But I never did get to see that show because it was preempted here on the West Coast for a vice presidential debate.
Looking back, is it something that you're glad that you did, or do you regret it?
Oh, no, I'm glad I did it. I made him fly my wife to New York with me and let us stay there 3 days.
Yeah.
So took a vacation.
$1 million worth of business. How much at risk is this, and how much will the steroid controversy find its way onto the front pages or the sports pages of our newspapers. An establishment that, as we have said, has largely ignored any kind of probe of the wrestling game. We'll talk with journalists who have probed it in just a moment.